1 year after the Battle of Badr, the political landscape of Western Arabia had changed dramatically. A small but determined community in Medina had defeated a larger Meccan force, altering the balance of prestige among the tribes. For the Quraysh leadership in Mecca, the loss was not merely military, it was reputational. Trade influence, tribal alliances, and authority had been shaken. In 625 CE, that tension returned to the battlefield. This is the story of the Battle of Uhud, a confrontation that began with confidence, shifted through a single critical decision, and ended as one of the most studied turning points in early Islamic history. So, welcome. Today we examine Uhud not only as a military encounter, but as a moment of leadership, discipline, and long-term transformation. The Battle of Uhud took place in the third year after the migration to Medina, approximately March 625 CE. The earlier Muslim victory at Badr had eliminated several prominent Quraysh leaders. Abu Sufyan ibn Harb emerged as Mecca's primary political and military authority. Determined to restore status and deter further challenges, he organized a large expedition toward Medina. Historical sources estimate the Meccan force at approximately 3,000 fighters, including cavalry and armored units. The Muslim force, by contrast, numbered around 700 to 800 after the withdrawal of approximately 300 men under Abdullah ibn Ubay, who turned back before the confrontation. That withdrawal reduced the Muslim strength significantly and revealed internal tensions within Medina. The Muslim leadership decided to confront the approaching army outside the city rather than conduct purely urban defense. The chosen location was near Mount Uhud, a large rocky ridge north of Medina. The positioning was deliberate. Mount Uhud secured the rear. A small elevated hill protected one vulnerable flank, and on that hill, 50 archers were stationed with explicit instructions: remain in place under all circumstances. The instruction was direct and repeated regardless of whether the Muslims appeared victorious or defeated. They were not to abandon their post. Combat began with traditional duels between champions from both sides, followed by a broader engagement. Early momentum favored the Muslim side. The Meccan front lines were pressured. Several Quraysh standard-bearers were killed. The coordinated Muslim advance created visible disruption in Meccan ranks. From a tactical perspective, the initial deployment was functioning effectively. The defensive arrangement limited cavalry mobility and forced frontal engagement. At this stage, it appeared that the Muslims might replicate the outcome of Badr. But battlefield dynamics are rarely linear. As Meccan lines began to pull back, many Muslim fighters interpreted the retreat as decisive victory. Some began collecting abandoned equipment and spoils from the field. Observing this, the majority of the archers on the hill concluded that their mission was complete. Despite prior instructions, most left their elevated position. Only a small number remained. This decision altered the geometry of the battlefield. Among the Meccan commanders was Khalid ibn al-Walid, at that time aligned with the Quraysh. He commanded a mobile cavalry unit positioned to exploit opportunity. When he observed the now unprotected flank, he executed a rapid maneuver around the hill and struck from the rear. The result was immediate disorientation. Muslim fighters who had advanced forward were suddenly attacked from behind. Lines fragmented. Communication broke down. In the confusion, Hamza ibn Abdul-Muttalib, a central and highly respected figure, was killed. The Prophet Muhammad was injured during the clash. Reports describe facial wounds and temporary loss of coordination. A rumor spread that he had been killed, further intensifying panic among the ranks. Despite this, a core group regrouped around him once his survival was confirmed. By the end of the engagement, approximately 70 Muslims had been killed. Meccan losses were significantly lower. However, the Meccan army did not advance into Medina itself. After declaring symbolic success and reclaiming honor, they withdrew from the area. Across early Islamic historical sources, several elements remain consistent. The Muslims initially held the advantage. The archers left their assigned position contrary to instructions. Khalid ibn al-Walid's cavalry maneuver exploited the exposed flank. The Prophet was injured but survived. The Meccan army withdrew without occupying Medina. These points form the core historical framework of the event. Interpretations of Uhud vary depending on analytical lens. In Islamic theological interpretation, the battle is framed as a moral and spiritual test, a corrective moment following the confidence generated by Badr. Quranic passages revealed afterward emphasize discipline, unity, and accountability. From a military history perspective, Uhud is examined as a case study in positional warfare. The abandonment of high ground and failure to maintain flank security are viewed as decisive operational errors. Leadership analysts often highlight the contrast between strategic planning and execution failure. The original deployment was sound. The breakdown occurred at the level of adherence. Both interpretation, spiritual and strategic, intersect around the concept of discipline. One of the enduring aspects of Uhud is the response to crisis. Despite injury and battlefield chaos, the Prophet reorganized surviving fighters and prevented complete collapse. Rather than pursuing reckless counterattack, he consolidated defensively near the mountain, stabilizing the situation. Abu Sufyan, on the opposing side, refrained from pressing into Medina. This decision has been interpreted as strategic caution, preserving gains without risking overextension. Both leaders demonstrated restraint after initial violence. Leadership, in this context, was not merely about aggression. It was about calculating limits. The Battle of Uhud offers several enduring lessons applicable beyond its historical setting. First, tactical advantage must be sustained, not assumed. Early success does not eliminate vulnerability. Second, discipline under instruction determines structural stability. A plan's integrity depends on collective compliance. Third, mobility and awareness can reverse disadvantage. Khalid's maneuver demonstrates the impact of rapid situational assessment. Fourth, morale management during crisis influences survival. Rumors nearly caused collapse. Communication restored coherence. Finally, resilience after setback shapes long-term trajectory. The Muslim community did not dissolve after Uhud. Instead, it recalibrated. In the immediate aftermath, Medina experienced mourning and internal reflection. The Quran addressed the battle directly, reinforcing themes of patience, obedience, and communal solidarity. Politically, Uhud did not end the conflict between Mecca and Medina. Instead, it escalated strategic maneuvering, leading eventually to later confrontations such as the Battle of the Trench. Importantly, Uhud reshaped internal discipline within the Muslim ranks. Military organization became more structured. Obedience to command during active operations was reinforced as foundational. In many ways, Uhud accelerated institutional maturity. History often remembers victories with celebration and defeats with silence. Uhud occupies a different category. It was neither total defeat nor decisive victory. It was interruption, an interruption in momentum, an interruption in certainty, an interruption that forced recalibration. Communities, like individuals, are often strengthened not by uninterrupted success, but by corrective experience. The slopes of Mount Uhud still stand outside Medina today. The battlefield is quiet, but its narrative continues to be studied across military academies, religious institutions, and leadership seminars alike. The Battle of Uhud demonstrates how fragile momentum can be in moments of transition. A smaller force, strategically positioned and initially successful, lost its advantage through premature assumption. Yet the event did not dismantle the emerging Muslim community. Instead, it clarified its vulnerabilities. It reinforced internal discipline. It refined leadership awareness. It deepened spiritual introspection. History is not shaped only by triumphs. It is shaped by how societies respond to their own mistakes. Uhud was a moment when strategy met human impulse, and impulse briefly prevailed. The consequence was costly, and the lesson was permanent. For you, if the archers had maintained their position, would the early trajectory of Islamic history have accelerated differently? Or was the setback at Uhud a necessary inflection point that ultimately strengthened the structure of the community? I invite you to consider not only the military outcome, but the long-term transformation it produced. Leave a comment, don't forget to like the video, and encourage us by clicking the subscribe button. See you later.